The morning sun draped the cul-de-sac in a gentle glow, the kind of light that should have promised peace. Birds sang, sprinklers ticked, and new mother Simone Walker pushed her baby's stroller slowly down the sidewalk, rocking Ava with every careful step. Ava had just drifted into that half-sleep baby's carried like treasure, her tiny lips pursed, her fingers curled like seashells. Simone inhaled deeply. For once, the neighborhood felt calm. After months of pregnancy, after weeks of adjusting to sleepless nights, this was her moment of quiet, her daughter's breath, the rhythm of wheels on pavement, the hush of morning. She barely noticed the rows of perfectly manicured lawns and freshly painted fences. They all blurred into the background. But then, the calm snapped. From across the street, Patricia Hensley stepped out of her driveway like a general entering a battlefield. Her white sundress was pressed to perfection, her blonde bob immaculate, her HOA badge glinting like a sheriff's star. She moved with purpose, heels clicking on concrete, lips pressed into a line that spelled judgment. Simone's pulse quickened. She had seen Patricia before, lecturing neighbors about trash cans left out too long, berating a teenager for parking half a tire over the curb. But today, the woman's eyes weren't on lawns or fences. They were locked on Ava's stroller. Patricia stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, directly in Simone's path. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She simply planted herself there, a blockade of authority. "Good morning, Simone," Patricia said, her voice as sharp as cut glass. "We need to have a serious talk." Simone hesitated, glancing down at Ava, who stirred at the sudden tension. "I'm sorry, I'm trying to get her to nap." "This won't wait." Patricia's gaze dropped to the stroller. "Your child." A chill crawled up Simone's spine. She tightened her grip on the handle. "What about her?" Patricia took a deliberate step closer, lowering her voice but not her arrogance. "I've been watching. And I don't think you're capable of caring for her the way she needs. You look exhausted. Frazzled. This neighborhood has standards, and frankly, I'm not convinced you meet them." Simone blinked in disbelief. "Excuse me?" Patricia straightened, her chin tilted high. "I want you to hand me that baby." The words landed like a slap. Simone's breath caught, her heart thundering in her ears. She instinctively pushed the stroller back a step, shielding Ava with her own body. "You're out of your mind." From nearby houses, blinds shifted. Curtains twitched. Neighbors were watching, silent witnesses peering out through glass. Some even held up phones, cameras glinting in the sun. Patricia noticed too, but she didn't flinch. She thrived on an audience. "Simone, this isn't up for debate. As HOA president, I have a responsibility to this community. If a child is in danger..." A new voice cut through, calm but laced with steel. "Finish that sentence, Patricia." Both women turned. Adrian Walker strode up the sidewalk, his frame filling the morning light. He was dressed simply, black t-shirt, joggers, but he carried himself with the weight of discipline, of training honed in battlefields far beyond this quiet suburb. His eyes, dark and unyielding, locked onto Patricia with quiet fury. Simone exhaled in relief, though her body stayed tense. Patricia faltered for just a moment, but pride wouldn't let her back down. "Adrian, I'm only doing what's best." "You think what's best," Adrian interrupted, stepping closer, "is demanding my wife hand over our newborn?" The silence thickened. Even the sprinklers seemed to pause. "No one touches my daughter," Adrian said, voice low, controlled, dangerous. "Not now. Not ever." For the first time, Patricia's confidence wavered. She glanced at the watching neighbors, at the lenses aimed her way, and her smile cracked into something brittle. "This isn't over," she muttered, before stepping aside. Simone gripped Adrian's arm, her knuckles pale. Ava stirred softly, still safe, still theirs. As they walked past, Adrian leaned down to Simone. His tone was gentle for her ears alone. "She crossed a line. And she doesn't know it yet, but that's a mistake." Behind them, Patricia stood rigid on the sidewalk, her empire of rules and fines suddenly fragile under the weight of one man's calm promise. And the neighborhood, every watching eye, every recording phone, knew something had just shifted. The battle had begun. The days that followed should have been filled with nothing more than baby cries, lullabies, and moments of exhausted joy. But instead, they carried a creeping weight. Simone felt it every time she stepped outside, every time she caught Patricia's watchful eyes or saw neighbors whispering on driveways. The air itself felt different, charged, tense, waiting for something to break. It started with the letters. On Monday morning, a cream-colored envelope appeared in their mailbox. Simone thought it was a welcome card until she opened it and found bold black print. Violation notice. Your lawn is 1.5 inches above regulation height. Immediate trimming required. Fine, $150. Simone frowned, holding the paper as Ava whimpered in her arms. The grass was barely longer than their neighbors, and besides, Adrian had mowed just 2 days earlier. By Wednesday, another notice arrived. This one claimed their trash bins were visible from the street, though Simone had tucked them neatly behind the fence. Fine, $200. Friday brought the most insulting one yet, noise complaint, infant crying after 9 p.m. Simone slammed that one down on the kitchen counter, her voice trembling. She's a baby, Adrian. She cries. What do they want me to do, muzzle her? Adrian stood silent for a long beat, his jaw working. Then he picked up the letter and shredded it into strips. They want control, he said quietly. This isn't about grass or trash or Ava. Patricia is testing us. She's pushing to see how far she can go. Simone rubbed her temples, exhaustion sinking into her bones. We just came here to live in peace. Why can't she leave us alone? Adrian placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Because peace isn't power. She thrives on control. But she picked a wrong family. By the next week, the harassment escalated. Patricia didn't just rely on letters. She began spreading whispers. At the grocery store, Simone overheard two women at the end of the aisle, their voices low but sharp. Did you hear? That new family, he's unstable. Dangerous. They say he's violent. The wife's scared of him. Simone's chest tightened, fury and fear tangling together. She wanted to shout at them, to defend Adrian, but she knew yelling would only feed Patricia's lies. Instead, she turned away, holding Ava tighter, but her hand shook all the way home. That night, Simone sat on the couch, tears streaking her cheeks, Ava asleep against her chest. She's poisoning everything, she whispered. Even the neighbors look at us like we don't belong. Adrian crouched in front of her, resting his hands gently on her knees. His voice was calm, but his eyes were dark with storm. Let her talk. I've been called worse by people who tried harder. Words can't break us. But if she tries to touch you or Ava again, his jaw tightened. That's where I draw the line. 2 days later, Patricia struck bolder. Simone was rocking Ava on the porch when a pair of strangers walked up the driveway in polos with clipboards. We're here on behalf of the HOA, one said briskly. We need to inspect the inside of your home for compliance. Simone's breath caught. Inside? No. Absolutely not. Before they could argue, the screen door creaked open behind her. Adrian stepped out, his presence filling the porch like a shadow stretching over prey. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. You've got 3 seconds to leave my property, he said evenly, or you'll find out exactly what kind of training I have. The men exchanged glances, their bravado crumbling. Without another word, they backed down the driveway, muttering excuses. Simone exhaled shakily. They just walked right up here. Adrian's eyes scanned the street, noting every curtain twitch, every phone camera raised behind glass. His voice was quiet, almost a promise. She thinks this is a game. But she doesn't understand yet, this is survival. And I don't lose. That night, when Simone checked the mailbox, she found not a letter but a note scrawled by hand on plain paper. "That baby doesn't belong here." Her heart stopped. The paper fluttered from her hand. And for the first time, Simone realized this wasn't just harassment anymore. This was war. Morning came heavy, with the kind of silence that didn't feel natural. Simone sat at the kitchen table, rocking Ava in her arms, while Adrian scanned the neighborhood through the window. He wasn't paranoid, he was observant, and every detail told a story. The blinds across the street shifted. Curtains quivered. A man watering his lawn stopped the second Adrian glanced his way. The walkers weren't just being watched anymore, they were being monitored. "Feels like we're living in a fishbowl," Simone muttered, exhaustion etched across her face. Adrian didn't turn from the window. "It's worse than that. Patricia's turning the whole block into her army." By the end of the week, the HOA had announced a mandatory neighborhood safety meeting in the clubhouse. Adrian almost ignored it until 3 separate notices arrived, warning of penalties for non-attendance. "Safety meeting," Adrian scoffed, tossing the flyer onto the counter. "She wants a stage." Simone bit her lip. What if it's a trap? What if she tries to make a scene with Ava there? Adrian's eyes softened as he looked at his wife and daughter. "Then we'll show up. Not because she commands us. Because I refuse to let her tell this story without us in the room." The meeting was packed. Neighbors filled folding chairs, murmuring, their faces half curious, half fearful. Patricia stood at the front like a queen addressing her court, her posture rigid, her smile painted. "Thank you all for coming," she began, voice sweet but commanding. "As you know, our neighborhood's safety and harmony are my top priorities. Recently, certain disruptions have raised concerns." Her eyes slid deliberately to Simone, who sat with Ava cradled in her arms. Conversations hushed. All eyes followed Patricia's. "These disruptions," Patricia continued, "include loud arguments, strangers loitering, and general instability that threaten our community's standards. We must ask ourselves, are all families here truly fit to raise children in such a well-ordered place?" The words sliced through the air. Simone's cheeks flushed hot, tears burning at the corners of her eyes. Ava stirred restlessly, as if sensing her mother's distress. Adrian rose slowly from his chair. His movement alone commanded the room. The murmur died. He didn't shout. He didn't posture. His voice was calm, even, but every syllable carried weight. "You're talking about my family." Patricia's smile stiffened. "If the shoe fits." No, Adrian stepped forward, his gaze sweeping the room. "Let's call this what it is. Harassment. You've been issuing false fines, sending strangers to my house, spreading rumors in stores. And now you stand here, questioning whether my wife can raise her own daughter?" Patricia tried to interject, but Adrian's voice cut clean through. "I served this country so people like you could live free. And I'll be damned if I let anyone, threaten my family under the excuse of standards." For a moment, silence reigned. A few neighbors shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away, shame tugging at their faces. Others still watched Patricia, waiting to see if her control held. Patricia's lips thinned. "If you don't like the way this community is run, perhaps you should reconsider whether you belong here." Adrian's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, just enough that Patricia flinched, though he never touched her. His words were quiet, almost intimate. "We're not going anywhere." That night, Simone put Ava down in her crib, her hands trembling. "She's not going to stop, Adrian. She'll find another way." Adrian tucked a blanket around the baby, his mind already running scenarios, contingencies, defenses. He had felt it during the meeting, the shift in the crowd. Patricia wasn't untouchable anymore. Some neighbors were questioning her. Others were afraid. But fear was dangerous. Fear could be weaponized. And when Simone checked the porch before bed, she found another note shoved under the mat. This one was worse than the last. "You've been warned. The baby isn't safe as long as she stays here." Simone's knees nearly buckled. She pressed the paper to Adrian's chest, voice breaking. They're threatening her now. Adrian's hand closed over the note, his eyes narrowing into steel. Then it's time, he said softly, to remind Patricia what happens when she picks a fight with a Navy SEAL. The morning felt wrong before it even began. The air was too still, the neighborhood too quiet, as if everyone was waiting behind curtains for the next act of a play. Simone sensed it immediately when she stepped outside with Ava's stroller. She scanned the street, unease curling in her chest. Then she saw them. Patricia stood at the end of the walkway, flanked by two men in crisp polo shirts, clipboards in hand like props to legitimize their intrusion. They weren't neighbors Simone recognized, strangers Patricia had pulled in to give her threats weight. "Good morning, Simone," Patricia called, her tone falsely sweet. "We need another word." Simone froze, her grip tightening on the stroller handle. Ava stirred, tiny fists flexing against the blanket. "Not now," Simone said firmly. Patricia's smile widened, predator's teeth hidden behind politeness. "Oh, but it has to be now. We've given you notices, warnings, chances to correct your behavior. You've ignored all of them. For the safety of this community, I'm demanding once again," she gestured sharply toward the stroller. "Hand over the baby." The words hit like a physical blow. Simone's chest constricted, rage and terror colliding in her veins. She backed up a step, shielding Ava with her body. "Get away from us." One of the men moved forward, clipboard tucked under his arm like he might reach for the stroller itself. Simone's heart lurched. And then Adrian's voice cut through, low and commanding. "Take one more step. I dare you." He emerged from the side of the house, moving with controlled precision, every inch of him radiating authority. His shadow stretched across the driveway, and in that moment he didn't look like a man fresh from deployment, he looked like a soldier still on mission. The stranger froze mid-step. Patricia stiffened but lifted her chin, unwilling to back down. "Adrian, this is exactly the aggression we've been talking about. You're proving my point. An unstable man raising a child in a neighborhood like this? It's unacceptable." Adrian walked slowly toward them, his eyes never leaving hers. "Unstable?" He almost laughed, though there was no humor in the sound. "Lady, you have no idea what unstable looks like. But keep pushing, and I'll show you what controlled looks like. Controlled, precise, and unstoppable." Neighbors' blinds fluttered. Phones appeared at windows. The block had turned into a silent arena, spectators hungry for a fight. Patricia's men shifted nervously, their earlier bravado evaporating. One muttered, "Maybe we should go." "No," Patricia snapped. "He's bluffing. He thinks standing there looking intimidating will scare me off. But this neighborhood belongs to me." Adrian stopped just a few feet from her, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper that carried anyway. "Finish that sentence, Patricia." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Even the men beside her took a step back, suddenly unwilling to be her shield. Patricia faltered, eyes darting to the watching houses. Her smile wavered, cracking at the edges. She wasn't used to resistance, not like this. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "This isn't the end. I'll find another way." Adrian's gaze didn't waver. "Try. And I'll be right here. Every time. No one, and I mean no one, touches my wife or my daughter." The men finally broke, retreating down the sidewalk with hurried steps. Patricia remained frozen, her face flushed, her control slipping with every passing second. Simone's voice, shaking but firm, rose from behind Adrian. "Leave us alone, Patricia. Before you ruin yourself completely." Patricia glared one last time, then turned on her heel and stormed away, her empire of rules suddenly fragile under the weight of her neighbor's eyes. Adrian exhaled, his shoulders easing slightly, but his eyes stayed hard. He reached for Simone, placing a steadying hand on her arm. Ava cooed softly, unaware of the war brewing around her. "She won't stop," Simone whispered. Adrian nodded, his voice calm but resolute. Then neither will I. Behind them, blinds snapped shut, whispers spread like wildfire, and the neighborhood knew the line had been drawn. And this time, Patricia wasn't the only one watching. Simone had grown used to the constant letters, the whispers, the stares. But nothing prepared her for the knock at the door that came on a gray Tuesday morning. She opened it with Ava balanced on her hip and froze. Two uniformed officers stood on the porch, clipboards in hand, badges flashing. "Mrs. Walker?" one asked. "We've received a report of possible child neglect in this household. We need to come inside." Simone's breath caught. "What? That's insane." Who would? But she didn't even have to ask. Her mind went straight to Patricia. Ava whimpered, sensing her mother's fear. "Ma'am," the officer said, "gentler now, we just need to take a look. These things are routine. It'll go faster if you cooperate." Simone's heart pounded, her arms tightening around Ava protectively. She wanted to scream, to tell them to leave, but before she could answer, Adrian's voice cut from the hallway. "What's going on?" He appeared, calm but with that unmistakable edge, like a blade hidden in shadow. When the officers explained, his eyes darkened. "You've got a false report," Adrian said, stepping forward. "My wife is an incredible mother, and my daughter is perfectly cared for. Whoever filed this is wasting your time." The lead officer shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, we still have to." "No," Adrian interrupted, his voice steady but firm. "You don't come into my house without a warrant. That's the law. You know it, and so do I." The silence was sharp. Finally, the officers exchanged looks and relented. "We'll file it as resolved," one muttered. "Sorry for the disturbance." As they walked back to their car, Simone leaned against the wall, trembling. "She called them. She actually tried to take Ava away from us." Adrian pulled her close, his jaw tight with fury. "She just crossed the last line." That night, Simone tried to sleep, but the smallest noises jolted her awake, the creak of the fence, the rustle of leaves. At 2 a.m., Ava's cry pulled her from bed. She lifted her daughter, rocking her softly, when she noticed a shadow move across the lawn outside the nursery window. Her blood went cold. "Adrian," she whispered urgently. He was already awake, already moving, his instincts sharp as ever. He crossed the room silently and peered through the blinds. Two figures lingered near the porch, whispering. One of them bent down near the stroller they had left outside earlier that evening. Adrian's voice was a growl. "They're trying to stage something. Make it look like we're careless with Ava." Simone clutched their daughter tighter. "What do we do?" Adrian kissed the top of Ava's head, then turned toward the door, his shoulders squared, his stride purposeful. "We stop playing defense." He flung the front door open so fast the figures nearly stumbled backward. "Enjoying the view?" Adrian called out, his voice low, deadly calm. The men froze, caught under the porch light. They weren't police, and they weren't neighbors, just hired muscle, faces half hidden beneath caps. One stammered, "We were just checking." "Wrong answer." Adrian stepped out onto the porch, his presence swallowing the space between them. "Tell Patricia this ends tonight. She comes near my wife or my daughter again, and I won't settle it with words." The men didn't argue. They scrambled off the lawn, disappearing into the shadows, leaving Adrian standing tall under the cold night sky. When he returned inside, Simone was still rocking Ava, her face pale. "She's not just harassing us anymore. She's trying to destroy us." Adrian closed the door, locking it with deliberate care. Then he looked at Simone, his voice steady, a vow carved into stone. She wanted a fight. Now she's going to find out what it means to pick one with a Navy SEAL. Adrian had spent his life studying enemies. In foreign deserts, on dark seas, in cities that smelled of smoke and fear, he learned one truth: the loudest tyrants were usually the weakest. Patricia might wear pearls and wave HOA bylaws like scripture, but underneath, she was fragile. and now she had threatened his family. He woke before dawn, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of black coffee, laptop open, eyes sharp. Simone joined him quietly, still in her robe, Ava asleep upstairs. "You didn't sleep," she whispered. Adrian's lips tightened. "Didn't need to." On the screen were property records, financial disclosures, neighborhood association filings. Patricia had built her empire on control, but control always left fingerprints. Adrian's military discipline turned into digital precision, tracking liens, back taxes, even contractor disputes Patricia had buried under red tape. Within an hour, he found cracks. Patricia had been funneling HOA funds to a maintenance company that didn't exist. She'd issued fake fines to neighbors who never saw the money returned to community projects. And worse, she'd been reported before, by a family who mysteriously moved away overnight. Adrian leaned back, exhaling slowly. "She's dirty." "Completely." Simone's eyes widened. "If this is true—" "It's true," Adrian cut in. "And if she thinks she's the only one who can play games, she's about to learn different." That afternoon, Adrian began walking the neighborhood, casually but deliberately. He talked to neighbors he barely knew, the ones who always kept their heads down. At first, they were hesitant, glancing toward Patricia's house as though she might appear at any moment. But Adrian had a way of looking a man in the eye that made truth spill out. Slowly, stories emerged, fines for garden flowers, threats over paint colors, harassment of families who didn't fit the community image. One elderly veteran confessed Patricia had threatened to foreclose on his home over a missing fence plank. "She scares people into silence," the man muttered, lowering his voice. "Not anymore," Adrian replied. By the end of the day, Adrian had a folder thick with testimonies, copies of letters, photos of citations. He wasn't just collecting evidence, he was building a case, piece by piece, like a mission dossier. That night, he sat with Simone on the couch, spreading everything out on the coffee table. "This is more than harassment," Simone whispered, touching the stack of papers. "She's a criminal." Adrian nodded. "And criminals get exposed." He leaned forward, voice low but burning with purpose. "The Navy taught me patience. Strategy. You don't hit the target until you've mapped every angle. But when you strike to end it." Simone searched his face, worry and trust mixing in her eyes. "Adrian, you're scaring me a little." He reached for her hand, softer now. "I'm not bringing war to our home. I'm ending the one she started." The next step was quieter, but just as lethal. Adrian slipped into the HOA office after hours. He didn't need to break in, just waited for Patricia's assistant to leave and held the door with a practiced hand. Inside, he found files Patricia had tried to keep buried. Double-billed landscaping, inflated invoices, fines that never matched official records. By the time he walked out, a USB drive in his pocket, Adrian knew he had everything he needed. Later, standing at the window, he watched Patricia's house across the cul-de-sac. Lights glowed warm, her silhouette passing occasionally against the curtains. She thought she was untouchable. She thought her threats and lies gave her power. Adrian's voice was a whisper, meant for himself alone. "You came for my wife. You came for my daughter. Now I'm coming for you." The Navy SEAL wasn't just awake, he was hunting. For years, the neighborhood had moved to Patricia's rhythm, her rules, her fines, her voice booming at meetings while everyone else lowered theirs. But Adrian knew the secret to breaking tyrants: you didn't just fight them, you stripped away the fear that gave them power. The next HOA meeting was packed. Patricia sat at the head of the table, pearls gleaming, lips pursed into that permanent sneer. Beside her, the board members, hand-picked allies too timid to challenge her, flipped through papers they barely understood. When Adrian and Simone walked in, a hush fell. Neighbors shifted uneasily, whispering. Some looked relieved, others nervous. Patricia's eyes narrowed. "You don't belong here, Mr. Walker," she said coldly. "This is official business. If you have a complaint, you can file it properly." Adrian set a thick folder on the table with deliberate calm. This is official business. The sound of paper slapping the wood was like a gunshot. Patricia flinched, just slightly. Adrian didn't miss it. I've spoken with your neighbors. All of them. I've gathered copies of every fraudulent fine, every inflated invoice, every threat. You've been stealing from this community for years. Gasps rippled through the room. Patricia's face turned crimson. Lies, she snapped. Baseless accusations from outsiders who don't understand. Outsiders? Adrian cut her off, his voice sharp. I fought overseas so families like yours could sleep safely at night. This is my home now. And you're not going to threaten my wife, my daughter, or anyone else in this neighborhood again. The room shifted. People who had been silent for years raised their eyes. An older woman, Mrs. Ramirez, spoke trembling but firm. He's right. Patricia fined me $500 for planting roses. She said they weren't approved color. Another man stood. She tried to evict me when my son parked his truck in the driveway. Called it a safety hazard. One by one, voices rose, stories spilled. The fear was breaking, replaced by anger. Patricia's eyes darted wildly, the control she once had slipping from her grasp. Sit down, she shrieked. This is insubordination. I own this board. Adrian leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. No. You don't own anyone here. Not anymore. He pulled a small device from his pocket and set it on the table. A tiny green light blinked. I recorded your hired men trespassing on my property. I recorded the threats. I've also documented every false report you've made to authorities, including the one where you tried to have child services take my daughter. A stunned silence fell. Patricia's mouth opened, but no words came. Adrian stood tall, gathering the folder. The evidence is already in the hands of the county inspector and the police. If anyone here wants to add their voice, now's the time. Together, we don't just stop her, we bury her lies for good. Simone looked around the room, her heart swelling as neighbors, once cowed and silent, now nodded, murmuring their agreement. Someone started clapping softly. Then louder. Soon the room thundered with applause, not for Adrian alone, but for the collective breaking of chains. Patricia's hands trembled on the table. For the first time, she looked small. This isn't over, she hissed, voice cracking. You'll regret crossing me. Adrian's eyes narrowed, calm and lethal. No, Patricia. You'll regret crossing us. Later that night, as the Walkers returned home, neighbors stopped them along the street. Hands shook Adrian's, hugs wrapped around Simone. People whispered thanks, promises of support. The air felt different, lighter, freer. Inside, Adrian finally allowed himself a breath. He cradled Ava in his arms, her tiny fingers curling around his thumb. This neighborhood belongs to her now, he murmured to Simone, voice softer. Not to Patricia. Not to fear. But in the quiet of the night, Adrian knew one thing for certain, Patricia wasn't finished. People like her never walked away without a fight. And when she made her final move, he'd be ready. The neighborhood was no longer quiet. Patricia's downfall had sent ripples through every cul-de-sac. Neighbors whispered openly now, organizing meetings without her, rallying around the Walkers. But like a cornered animal, Patricia refused to fade into the shadows. 3 nights after the meeting, Adrian sensed it before it happened. The air was too still. The street too quiet. His instincts prickled, a hunter's awareness honed on foreign battlefields. He was upstairs, checking on Ava, when he heard the faint crunch of footsteps outside the window. Adrian moved fast but silent, pulling the curtains just enough to see. A black SUV idled near the curb, its lights off. 2 figures slipped out, moving toward the house. He muttered under his breath, she couldn't let it go. Downstairs, Simone stirred from the couch as the door rattled. Adrian. I've got it, he said, calm but sharp. Stay with Ava. Don't open this door for anyone. She nodded, clutching the baby monitor to her chest. Adrian slipped into the dark, every step deliberate. He didn't need weapons, his training was the weapon. He positioned himself by the entryway just as the lock clicked. The door eased open, and two men in black slipped inside, whispering. Grab the stroller. Stage it. Make it look like. They never finished. Adrian exploded from the shadows, a blur of controlled violence. His fist dropped the first intruder before he could draw breath. The second swung wildly, but Adrian caught his arm, twisted, and pinned him face first to the hardwood. Who sent you? Adrian growled. The man whimpered. Patricia, she said, make them look unfit, she said. Adrian tightened his grip until the man screamed. You tell Patricia this was her last mistake. He shoved the intruder toward the door. Run. They didn't need telling twice. The SUV roared to life and peeled away, leaving tire marks across the street. By morning, Adrian had already called in the evidence. Not just the testimonies, not just the invoices, but now recordings of hired thugs trespassing on his property. Police cruisers pulled up outside Patricia's pristine white house as neighbors gathered to watch. She stood on her porch, shrieking, pearl necklace glinting in the sun. This is harassment. I am the HOA. You can't do this to me. But the officers didn't flinch. One read her rights while the other cuffed her. Cameras from neighbors' phones captured every second. Patricia's reign was ending, not in silence, but in humiliation. As they led her to the car, Patricia's eyes locked on Adrian. Pure venom. You think you've won? People like me never lose. Adrian stood at the edge of the lawn, arms folded, voice calm as stone. You already lost the moment you came for my family. The door slammed, muffling her screams. The SUV of law enforcement rolled away, leaving behind stunned silence broken only by the sound of neighbors cheering. That evening, the cul-de-sac felt alive again. Children played in the street without fear of fines. Neighbors brought over casseroles and fresh pies, not out of obligation, but gratitude. For the first time, the Walkers felt truly welcome. On the porch, Simone sat with Ava in her arms, rocking gently. Adrian lowered himself beside her, wrapping an arm around them both. It's over, she whispered. Adrian kissed her temple, watching the sun dip low. For her, maybe. But for us, it's just the beginning. This is Ava's home now. She'll grow up free. He looked out at the neighborhood, once a prison, now transformed into something brighter. And in that moment, the battle-hardened seal allowed himself something rare, peace. Simone smiled, pressing Ava's tiny hand against his chest. She'll know her father protected her before she could even understand it. Adrian's gaze softened, his voice almost a vow. And she'll never doubt it.